In the 30th millennium of humanity, the Milky Way has welcomed the sixth subspace evil god, light desire. Keywords of the novel. Warhammer 40k. Light desire without pop-ups, Warhammer 40k. Light Desire TXT Complete Collection Download, Warhammer 40k. Light Desire Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. The Court of Dawn. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Court of Dawn. The rustling sound of the wind comes from the scraping between the leaves. For all the commoners in the Empire's nests, this is no different from the most wonderful music in the world. They are not qualified to see the sky, and steel domes will accompany them throughout their lives. Lastlet has been reborn in this nest world called lighting for 26 years. Unlike those ordinary people around us who have been toiling for life without seeing the light, and gnawing on monotonous and tasteless food every day. Last has always been a bystander witnessing their lives. He is the only person who idles around the lower levels of lighting chow without any criminal suspicion. On the third day of each month, his aunt, who is far away in another agricultural world, will send him next month's food, and every 6 months, she will buy him 2 new clothes. But he has never met his aunt and uncle. The positioning he gave to these 2 relatives in his mind was probably someone like Xia Mu's uncle and aunt. At noon, there were children rushing to the pharmacy to buy medicine on the street, disheveled and hungry, with shoddy noise-proof earplugs in their ears. The steel giant called industry, assembled from a large amount of machinery, can never stop roaring, which will damage the eardrums of all those passing by the industrial zone. Last was wearing a slightly delicate white earplug. In fact, it was a headphone that played the white noise of autumn wind blowing through leaves. After observing the small clinics in the industrial area, he followed the outer walls of the industrial area all the way to the corridor bridge near the residential area. "Hello, Mr. Last." A stranger who was temporarily living under a covered bridge humbly took off his hat and bowed, paying tribute to his young savior. He has a lot of belongings around him, but not much is food or clothing. He is a painter, although he has never seen the real sky, ocean, or forests. He indirectly learned these from his father's picture book. When he touched those captivating colors with his fingers for the first time, he couldn't contain his true desires. He wants to spread these paintings to every nest city in lighting, so that those who will spend their lives in dark metallic colors can feel even a glimmer of light that shouldn't belong to them. He is not very tall, bony, and unkempt, looking a bit messy, but he takes good care of his hands used for painting. The water in the world of Chowdu is a very precious resource. As a wanderer who refused to be recruited by the upper class, he did not have much ability to take care of everything. Nests are artificial mountain ranges stacked in layers of architectural space, constructed from various sturdy rocks and metals, and can extend into the sky while occupying the entire continent. Even from outer space, at first glance, it is this magnificent miracle. After being shaken by it for a long time, one will only notice the lifeless wastelands on the planet polluted by industrial wastewater and garbage. The population of Nest City World can reach over 100 billion and is divided into thousands of Nest City cities. Among these people, only a small group of people live in a place where the nest can see the starry sky, which is called the spire. Then, there is the upper echelon, where the top manufacturers, officials from the top echelons who cannot reach the top, and some people related to the spires reside. Afterwards, there is the lower level where Last is located, and the lower level is where civilians are located. There are the most workers here, who will prepare the most war supplies for the Empire's expedition. There are no other nests in Liting, and most of the criminals, mutants, and even heretics at the bottom of the world can no longer be called human beings. Clothing, food, housing, transportation, electricity, and even various forms of enjoyment and art have been reduced all the way down from the spire to non-existent. At the lower level, almost everyone is living for food and medical care. Here, the number of people dying from gastrointestinal diseases is not much less than those who starve to death. This painter is rare. He has gained the appreciation of the upper class and has the hope of living in an environment with free electricity and sufficient food. But his thirst for spiritual nourishment made him give up his former middle-class family life and run to the lower levels of nest cities to show people his and his father's paintings. He occasionally replenishes new paper and paint from the upper class. His food source has recently come from Lassiter. In his eyes, this is a very beautiful young man with a certain trait that the lower class of the nest should not possess. Despite the other party repeatedly claiming to be 26 years old, he still cannot treat the generous food giver as a youth. Today's food, a bowl of mixed rice, and pumpkin soup. Last took out 2 boxes and placed them in front of the painter. Nearby passers-by should avoid this place as much as possible, avoiding their gaze from falling on precious food and becoming greedy. Their food, water, and even air all circulate in large quantities, unless there is a material provider born in their nest city. Thank you for your generosity, Mr. Last. Thank you for your care for over 3 months now. The hungry painter remained restrained and somewhat shy. This is what you deserve after giving up something, it should belong to you. Last took off her headphones and put them in her pocket. The painter once again thanked him and finally picked up the box of mixed rice. He had many doubts, but in the end, he couldn't speak up. His taste buds were only filled with the flavors of lard, soy sauce, eggs, vegetable leaves, sausages, and rice. I personally have a lighter taste, so I added less salt. It's probably not very salty, but there's plenty of salt in the sausage. Last introduced his work, knowing how terrible his cooking skills are, but people in this world are quite tolerant of food and not very picky. The painter, however, praised this delicious delicacy with high praise through indecent eating. On the canvas behind the painter, the landscape paintings are too distorted and not realistic, which are far from the scenery in Last's past memories. But he did not strike at this distant traveler who still wanted to spread the light, which was already everything that the other party possessed, both indestructible and incredibly fragile. These support him in fighting against hunger, cold, and displacement, as well as the exclusion and beating of the next city guard, and occasionally facing the trial process of whether he is a heretic. Farewell to the painter. Last delved deep along the residential area and finally arrived at the end, where there was a hidden church. In the 30th millennium, the empire that began in the early 30,000 AD, it was promoting truth, promoting atheism, and embarking on a great expedition, striving for the eternal glory of humanity. There is no doubt that a church should not exist, but it is nominally a mechanical religion, which was personally recognized by the human emperor as a church. The mechanical church believes in the God of 10,000 machines, that is, the God of technology and machinery. The members of this church worship the soaring of machinery and have a crazy love for most machinery. They may even replace a certain part of their body tissue with machinery to overcome the bitterness and weakness of flesh and blood. There is no one inside or outside the church. Every Monday, Last may come here, and the bishop of the Messiah, who has not been praised for 26 years in the church, will quietly wait for his arrival behind the curtain of the confessional room. It's like this church only exists for this lost person with black hair and eyes, an indifferent expression, and a youthful appearance. Stepping into the church and arriving at the confessional, Last sat down. The bishop behind the curtain seemed even more nervous than him. "Hello, Mr. Last. Osiris greets you and wishes you a comfortable afternoon." Last let out a soft, and then brought up a change. "You abandoned your former name, Bishop. 26 years ago, the mechanical bishop who arrived at lighting from Mars had already died, and now, only Osiris. What do you want to judge?" "Mr. Lassiter, I cannot judge anything. I only act according to the Lord's will, and my judgment depends on the Lord's attitude towards them. This mechanical cult and even the entire empire's heinous heresy have been spoken too many times in this small confessional chamber. Okay, Osiris, I'm starting to think of some things, but I'm not willing to accept them." Lassiter began to recall the past life he did not want to have. "This is your freedom, Mr. Way." Last. The bishop suppressed his praise of a certain existence. I have done many wrong things in my past life, I have made wrong choices due to illness, and I have also shifted my pain due to the terrifying pressure. I have seen a group of stray kittens. At that time, I lacked food, but I worked hard to save some money by buying cheap fish, some sausages, and cookies for them. I don't know who posted the footage of me feeding online, but I quickly faced criticism and verbal abuse. They said I shouldn't give cats that kind of food, but I have tried my best to avoid giving them starch to satisfy their hunger. In the midst of unpleasant language, hunger, and illness, I resisted using equally unpleasant words to fight back and showed them my food. That is a bowl of cold rice, with 2 scattered cabbage leaves on top. This is my food for the whole day. They quieted down for a while, followed by even more unpleasant insults. They said I was cheating and abusive, some said why poor people like me feed cats, and there were also more unpleasant and disgusting arguments. That's beyond your imagination. I suppressed all of this, even though my heart was not strong, I still boiled a few eggs for the kittens and fed them egg yolks. But one of them bit me, and I didn't have the money to get vaccinated, and I was still in pain. From that day on, I no longer fed them, and the culprit uploaded this image online. I received more accusations and insults. In the end, they won and I starved several innocent and lovely little creatures to death. Someone is preparing to reveal my real address, and they will welcome a frenzy of trial on the other end of the curtain. The sound of gritting teeth came, and the entire confessional space seemed to tremble. The bishop felt an unbearable blasphemy. He asked about the next developments in discontinuous words. Mr. Lassiter, where will come from? Not long after, I was lucky enough to die and evade their justice. The atmosphere in the confessional room began to become very oppressive. I have experienced many similar things in my not too long life. I have made many mistakes, some more serious and some lighter than starving cats, but they have always been evidence of my violence, tormenting my diseased empathy like nightmares. In the final moments before closing my eyes, I hypnotized myself, saying that I was a bad person, and then I just responded to a cyberbullying incident with the same unpleasant words. Last was immersed in a painful time in her past life. Dusty and gloomy attic, painful lungs, and many other symptoms. Eyes unable to see light due to conjunctivitis strive to see the glowing screen, and eye pain only reveals sharp words. The bishop choked on his throat and didn't know what to say, so he could only act as a quiet listener. After an unknown amount of time, Last mentioned her purpose for coming here. So, I can't believe some things. They say, I'm a collection of these emotions, I'm this symbol, they keep making me stand up and officially take over this power, I can't do it. Last felt a suffocation, his chest heaving and fighting against a certain emotion and instinct. I acknowledged the fact that I was unable to be saved at the last moment. Initially, I hoped that everyone could have a perfect world, without pain or any sin. I have built such a world with a pile of words, and it is difficult for me to see kind-hearted people suffer, which will make me extremely tormented. In my past life, this seemed to be called the Virgin Mary, which almost became a derogatory term. I often want to suffer for those kind people, but I myself am also in a seemingly endless sadness, anger, and resentment, but later I have found that many people are not worth saving, and my bottom line has been lowered time and time again until the end. I don't think even someone like me deserves to be saved. I don't know how many people in that world are more than a Virgin Mary like me, but I feel that I am not qualified or willing to become that kind of emotional aggregation. Whether it's because of the sins I have created that cannot be forgiven by myself, or because there are too many kind-hearted people who die in different sorrows but are helpless at the last moment, yet the world turns a blind eye to them and even harbors malice. Even though they finally received help, they were also cut off and converted into a fraction of some people's wealth. True repentance echoes with confusion in this small room. The bishop's finger squeezed into his palm, and he sorted out his thoughts and words of comfort amidst the complex and painful emotions. Can you tell me these things? It shows that you have made a choice in your heart, right? You should have already planned to no longer avoid it, no longer be a bystander. Of course, I I am not qualified to make a choice for you. For the next 30 seconds, the entire confessional room was eerily quiet. The anxious bishop is waiting for God's gospel. I think I know what to do now, thank you, Osiris. It's immensely glorious to be here for you. Osiris is somewhat speechless about this acknowledgement. The person behind the curtain stood up, and the sound of footsteps gradually faded away. The tall bishop knelt down and stood up. His body, which had been modified by various machines, has now recovered to be similar to that of a normal person. 26 years have passed, and I have finally arrived at this moment. The Lord's deception towards me has ended. So, it's time. After Osiris arrived at the church, there were more people kneeling here. 26 years ago, people from different places received a guidance and gathered here, witnessing a new life in complete destruction. Osiris approached them and, with great excitement, clenched his fists. As the 30th millennium approached, his glory began to fall to the ground. At the beginning of the birth of material providers, we heard his gospel and guidance. We gather here from different places, crossing the subspace, and demons emerge from the cracks, destroying the world and trying to prevent its birth. Akami, the world of the nest, was destroyed in our war with demons. At that time, I, along with 40.3 of you, were the last survivors, corresponding to his holy number. We lack limbs and are on the brink of extinction, living out a dim radiance. At that time, he came. The world is beginning to recover, the dead are reborn, and the shattered world returns to before the demons set foot. We have gained new life. The shattered planet Akami is reborn in the name of lighting, just like you and me. This world was once again discovered by the Empire and brought under its rule, as if nothing had changed. The Great Lord has always been immersed in the pain of his own power, unwilling to acknowledge his authority. Now, he has broken free from his shackles and embraced his power. It's time offering loyalty to him. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Providing Hope. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Providing Hope. I really hope that our City 436 also has material providers. Li Ting's afternoon break is quite brief, which is used to feed the workers. Their food is always a large piece of white substance, and the name of this thing is not very pleasant. As for the taste, the people at the bottom of the nest who have had the privilege of tasting candles say that candles are truly a rare delicacy. The material provider was a person with special abilities who suddenly appeared on a large scale throughout the entire empire about 26 years ago. These people can create things out of thin air, mainly food, followed by medicine, and some material providers can even restore severed arms for the injured. At first, out of vigilance against heresy, material providers were not trusted until the ruler of the human empire, the emperor, personally inspected them, and material providers officially became a special class of the empire. The first city has material providers who can provide a large amount of pumpkin, the crop that Holy Terra once owned, to the residents of the first city. It can serve as a staple food. Perhaps the nutritional content is not as good as the starch blocks in our hands, but the taste is really good. A short worker shared the rumors he heard with his colleagues as a topic of conversation. Holy Terra is the homeland of humanity, and her other name is Earth, the millennium calendar of the Empire, which is actually the era of Earth. Holy Terra. These workers have not heard many stories, but Holy Terra is the most desirable. The painter who gave his paintings to the lower class of Li Ting for free includes the beautiful scenery of Terra in his paintings. Bright flowers, delicate fruits, dark wooden tableware, and a silver tray containing these things. That is a painting of a picnic camp, with the background of these foods being a cliff grassland blown by sea breeze. The family of picnickers dressed appropriately and their faces filled with happy smiles. The painter once said that it was the second millennium, when humanity had not yet explored the starry sky. Speaking of material providers, I remember one thing. According to Miss Amelia from the upper echelons, the closest agricultural world to us, Enkelin, was destroyed 10 years ago, and the material providers there escaped. Due to the slow transmission of information in the distant starry sky, it was only now brought back by the Star Realm Army in City 867. Miss Amelia, as a member of the Star Realm Army's family, went to inquire about her father's return before knowing. A worker wearing a tattered woolen hat brought up something that could be considered a great thing in their eyes. The agricultural world is a planet carefully selected by the Empire with fertile soil. The agricultural world is also divided into many types, some that require human cultivation, and others that do not require many people. Ankolin is the latter, and the entire planet will be cultivated as a single piece of farmland, and then harvested by a supergiant harvester that can crush demon armies. These harvesters are sometimes thrown into war, and at that time they are called their real names, which is Titan. The destruction of an agricultural world often means that there will be more shortages of imperial food supply near the agricultural world. Unfortunately, Li Ting is located near Ankolin. I think the days of having 2 meals a day may not be many. Someone looked at the starch block in their hand and began to worry unnecessarily. Forget it, as we all know, the food in the agricultural world has never been supplied to us commoners, but to the upper floors and spires. What we eat is all by-products of mineral processing, synthesized. After chatting for a few words, one of the workers with excessive brain delay reacted. Wait, you said Ankara was destroyed 10 years ago. This worker has a sharp and sarcastic face. When others speak, he dare not make a sound, but his eyes have been fixed on the starch blocks in their hands, even if he has not finished his own. Others were wary and shrank back, intending to protect their own food. For a guy who has stolen children's food, being excluded is already the best punishment for him. In theory, he should be thrown to the bottom. Thank you to the Emperor. Li Ting is a nest capital world without any bottom layer, and his crimes will not lead to death. Therefore, after receiving a small punishment, his life was forgiven. Fendo, what does the destruction of Ankaran have to do with you? Do you have any relatives there? The foreman became dissatisfied and inquired about the thieves shouting and screaming. No, I don't have it, but there's someone there, a bastard who can get food without work. Fendo's jealousy almost flowed out of the corner of his eye. They don't know what the agricultural world looks like. In this era of great expeditions, the agricultural world of the Empire was better than 10,000 years later, but it was still unable to afford the cost of sending food to a child every month. The payment for food was still small, and the large cost was shipping. But their longing for a better agricultural world made them overlook this point. Even those who understand the structure of the agricultural world can find reasons, perhaps that couple is a noble or some other special identity in the agricultural world. Fendo's prompt made the surrounding workers look at each other. In the end, they remembered the young man with black hair and eyes, who appeared particularly fair and clean compared to the lower-class people who were haggard due to work. Perhaps it was a young man, whose age was always misjudged due to his appearance. Lastelette. That's right, it's him. He's a fraud. Ankaran was destroyed 10 years ago. Where did his aunt and uncle send him clothes and food for years? Fendo has wanted to steal the guy wearing white earplugs more than once. He wants to taste those foods, it's best to eat them. But every time he didn't get close to each other, he was discovered by the mechanical instructors. Most of the time, they only drove him away, but once, they broke one of his fingers. This kind attitude is completely different from what should be given to the lower class. If it really angers them, Fendo should have already been killed. So Fendo believes that the other party is only suspecting themselves of theft and trying to stop it, rather than defending that guy who is not very proficient in Gothic language. Last, who is always independent and has no worries about food and clothing, is the person that Fendo hates the most. Even if he almost killed Fendo's guards, he never hated him that much. The surrounding workers began to quiet down, and they were still unsure of what the anomaly Fendo had discovered. But Fendo quickly found an excuse. You wouldn't suspect him of being a material provider, would you? He's a heretic. His food all comes from impurities. He should be judged by the great imperial truth. And then die. What you said is indeed true. Someone began to respond to Fendo's suspicion. No material provider can provide such a wide variety of food at once. They offer no more than 2 types of food, all in unprocessed shapes, such as striped melons, pumpkins, and eggs, or an entire oversized sunflower flour plate. Sausages, potatoes, vegetables and rice, as well as eggs, these unseen and unheard of foods by the lower class, all appeared on a lower class plate. So, apart from being a heretic who has received gifts from evil gods, there is no other possibility for him. Thinking of being able to put that guy to death, Fendo's smile was particularly bright. But his smile disappeared in an instant, and he pointed to the other workers around him. I discovered this heresy and I will report it. You have no right to compete with me for this reward. The workers were relieved when they heard Fendo's words. To be honest, some of them have received the favor of that indifferent person. For this heretic, their emotions are complex, and if they do not report it, the laws of the empire will implicate them. Fortunately, now Fendo is going to do this. We won't compete with you. While the workers responded, they were a little further away from Fendo. However, Fendo didn't care and instead asked the foreman for leave, running to report and expose the situation. All of this fell into Last's eyes. To be honest, since he decided not to deceive himself anymore. The lie of having aunts and uncles living in the agricultural world will gradually crumble and affect things or people around them. He only longed for the kindness that Xiaomu received, so he deceived himself and was able to receive a package on the 3rd of each month. No one has ever mailed him anything, it's just the power of his evil god, creating something out of thin air and creating a package for him, and this package also comes with a family letter. The pain of breaking his own dream seemed to make his lungs ache as faintly as in his past life. Last did not immerse himself in this pain for too long. He began to get up and slowly walked towards Fendo's destination. On the road, someone is holding a painter's painting and happily collecting it. The painter ran from a distance with an indescribable smile, sharing his joy with this benefactor. Mr. Lassiter. Someone thanked me with tears in their eyes. He's planning to give his child 2 of my paintings as a birthday gift. I'm really happy and don't know what to say. The painter's fingers and face were still coated with paint, which, along with starch blocks, came from mineral substances. At this moment, it seemed that they were not as cold anymore. Congratulations. Last felt genuinely happy for him. Mr. Last, where are you going? I have something to attend to when I go to the city official stable. City official stables. You can't just go there casually. After a brief conversation of 2 or 3 sentences, the painter stood still. The official stables are the permanent offices of the lowest level officials in the Nest City, and those people treat all the lower level people like shepherds guarding sheep. In terms of attitude, sheepdogs treat sheep 10,000 times better than they treat lower class people. They disturb the official stable without any trouble, and are basically doing a negligible subtraction for the population of the Nest City. Don't worry, I just need to verify my identity as a material provider. Last reached out her hand and wiped the paint off the painter's face. The slender and fair fingers, which were even more slender than the painter's hands, touched the paint, and the painter surprisingly felt that the scene was too blasphemous and somewhat disrespectful. Mr. Last, are you a material provider? If a painter has any dreams, the first one is to let all the lower-level people in the nest see the sky and the real earth, as well as the ocean, snow-capped mountains, and forests. And the second one is to become a material provider, able to bring food and warmth to those who are hungry and cold. His second wish didn't even take into account himself, who was also short of food and clothing. Yes, so the food I provide you with is all created by myself, so you don't have to feel too guilty. The boy with an indifferent expression had a slight smile on his face. The painter did not have any jealousy, but was happy. He felt extremely fortunate that someone like Mr. Lassiter was a material provider. If possible, he hopes that Mr. Last can live a carefree life for a lifetime without experiencing any hardships. While the painter was pondering, Last said a sentence to him. "Child, your wish will come true." Then, he put on his white earplugs and walked slowly towards the official stable amidst the sound of the stream and the flying stream. "My wish." The painter looked down at his hand, and for some reason, some strange images flashed through his mind. Mingming Fendwa rushed to the official stable in a hurry, while Last walked slowly and even chatted with the painter for a while on the way. However, the two of them arrived at the official stable one step at a time. The low-level officials in charge of this residential area are now using a threatening tone to confront the untouchables who have just reported heresy to him. "You report Lastelet." The official was almost using an incredulous tone. Fendo didn't know where to go, he just nodded hard and was ready to hold his head and get kicked at any time. The low-level official called a colleague to inform their supervisor, and then he saw Last rushing behind Fendo. "Hello, Mr. Lassiter. Welcome to your visit. The last time you came here was 7 years ago, right?" The low-level official bowed and showed a pleasing smile as he leaned in. Fendo had no idea what the situation was, but his barren brain gave him a reason. Perhaps this is a special interrogation method used by officials to complete the interrogation of this heresy through a huge attitude change of first suppressing and then promoting. Fendo remembered 7 years ago when he stole children's food and was caught in the official stable. He should have been beheaded, but the officials eventually gave up the decision, beat him up, and let him go. Last's attitude remained indifferent, he didn't even glance at Fenmore, he had already given too many opportunities. "Are you here? There's something going on." The lower-ranking official pulled open the chair for Last. Almost immediately after sitting on the chair, a loud sound came from outside the official stable. "I heard you caught a heretic here." Following the sound, another person from the official stable who was vying for credit has arrived. The Nest City world is very large, with thousands of cities requiring lower-level officials to be responsible for order. They have a large number and there is vicious competition. Their dream is no longer to work hard for their electricity bills and food. They want to accumulate credit and go to the upper echelons to find a small place to settle down. Those officials with the worst abilities will be kicked out of the ranks and become short-lived ghosts under the hooves of roaring steel giants. Taking credit is something that many low-level officials love to do, and they never tire of it. The lower-level official who received Last's face suddenly turned cold, and he reminded the unfriendly bald head. "Sir Barry, this is the center of our jurisdiction, not the border of the jurisdiction." Bald but squinting his eyes, he didn't care about the other person's threat. Generally speaking, the border of a jurisdiction is the place to take credit for, and for the sake of the other party's last face, they did not reach the center. But recently, the bald man's pursuit of credit in this jurisdiction has not been stopped in any way. The person in charge of the other party's jurisdiction is busy with something and repeatedly indulges, giving Bald Head the idea of taking care of the other party's jurisdiction. The person behind Bald Barry pushed away the guy who wanted to block Last, and in the end, the bald man saw the heretic. "Thanks to my walking, you look quite surprising." "Oh, I remember, you're the guy wearing white earplugs." For those who are independent, most people's memories will be very profound. Last ignored the other party and instead looked up at the clock in the official stable. It's afternoon. Barry was very angry with the person in front of him, daring to ignore his authority. He was about to erupt when he saw a faint glow emanating from the table in front of him. Food slowly takes shape in the dim light. Well-grilled red sausage, sandwiched between two breads, with plenty of sauce and a good vegetable ratio. Beside it is a cup of cold tea. Last slowly spoke the next words. "It's time to have some afternoon tea." Barry's twisted expression instantly burst into a smile, changing his face so quickly that Fendo, who was already preparing to watch the good play next to him, did not expect it. Hello, the glory of the Emperor, providing hope to the people. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. A Mirror of Light Desire. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. A Mirror of Light Desire. Material providers not only provide material goods, but also hope. This is the original words from an expeditionary army. At that time, they jumped onto an alien warship and realized it was a trap specifically designed to kill the Emperor Angel Star Warriors. There is not a single grain of food found on this warship, and the air is extremely thin. Even if interstellar warriors have a steel stomach that can digest ceramic and metal powders, they cannot survive in such an environment. At that moment, a material provider walked out of the warship's hostage hold, bringing food, medicine, and even new arms, eyes, and organs to this besieged legion. This may sound a bit shocking, but the Empire's reporting on it tends to be positive. From then on, the angels of the Emperor regarded material providers as the glory of the Emperor, because the power of these creators out of thin air was too incredible. And linking it to the Emperor is the only non-heretical idea that is unparalleled. Since the Emperor began to recognize the status of material providers, these brilliants began to be plundered by various legions of the Great Expedition. They long for a material provider in their legion, so the shortage of various supplies will not be so urgent. In fact, the Empire has been recruiting material providers to participate in the war, with many responders. But there is also a rumor that later material providers were unwilling to participate in the war. That is, no material provider has ever left a battlefield alive. Therefore, Lassiter concealed himself as a material provider and falsely claimed that his aunt and uncle from the agricultural world would send him food on a monthly basis, which received appropriate brain nourishment in the minds of this group of people in the official stable. This is too reasonable. I kept hiding myself out of fear of war and death until I was reported as a heretic by a fool and had to step forward and prove my identity as a material provider. Thinking of this, the gaze of the lower-level officials in the official stable fell on Fendo, but there was no sympathy at all. Fendo's brain delay also received a response at this moment. He was bitten by these gazes, his heart was about to stop, his breathing became difficult, and his eyes turned black. He decided to beg for mercy. He is the most afraid of death. Mr. Lassiter, you don't need to come here in person. I can take care of everything for you. A tall man, suppressing all his anger and trying to show a smile, walked in from outside the official stable. It took him less than a minute to get here from the church, which could have been faster, but he needed time to calm his breathing and heartbeat. Hayne, I discovered it first. Barry has always been jealous of this tall, handsome, sunny, and handsome colleague, which is why he always invades the other party's jurisdiction. Until now, he has no intention of letting go. Discovering a material provider with such creative abilities may reward him more than discovering a heretic. If he can persuade the other party to join a certain legion, he will move directly to the upper class and become one of the lords he longs for. Hayne didn't give Barry a chance to finish speaking, so he punched Barry in the face. This rude blow was like a power hammer swinging. Hayne, who is 2.3 meters tall, is not on the same level as Barry, an ordinary person. I'm still eating. Lassiter reminded Hayne that his punch was a complete blow, and he might even have to enjoy a motion picture that turned him off for lunch. The head that was supposed to explode eventually flew out with its body, but obviously it couldn't survive. Hayne was ultimately brainwashed. Although many of his flaws had been repaired in 26 years, they still took root. The anger he felt for blasphemy left him without thinking of the best way to deal with it. The officials from other jurisdictions who came with Barry watched their superiors slowly dying, so frightened that they dared not speak up. Hayne instructed them, I have a personal letter from the governor. Barry deserves his death, and his charges will soon be announced. You replace his position, you will be in charge over there, and the appointment will be issued soon. Hayne drove away these unwelcome guests, who were still in a daze when they left, but the handwritten letter in Hayne's hand was not fake, with the governor's certificate on it. Even if it was fake, who would dare? I completely don't understand what the situation is, and why the officials at the bottom of the stable who have suggestions from their own superiors and the governor dare not think much. They covered Fendo's mouth, who was about to scream, when Hayne punched Barry to the brink of death. Now, they have dragged this fool out. The less they know, the more beneficial it is for themselves, and they understand. The reason why they were so polite to last was because Hayne would solemnly explain this issue to them every day, and hinted at what would happen if there were any mistakes. When only Hayne was left in the official stable, he knelt down to the ground. Last chewed slowly and finally drank a glass of iced tea slowly. Dorian wants you to move to the top of the tower. Hayne simply called out the governor's name, as if the governor was nothing special. I won't go. Last is quite resistant and capricious towards things like Nowo. Hayden suffered immensely, allowing the great lord to reside in the lower classes, which was even more painful than killing him. He had endured this agony for 20.6 years. When he was wearing power armor, his fists and hammers had killed countless alien lords, but now they don't have enough strength to lift the lord's flag. That old one Malawian Kwacha power armor, along with his past, was buried 26 years ago. So what do you plan to do next? Hayne longed for the oracle. I'll sit down for a while and digest after dinner. The whispers of the evil god made Negu burst into laughter. Unlike the atmosphere inside the official stable, outside the official stable, it is oppressive and terrifying. Hayne naturally didn't come alone, and when this news reached the secret church, none of the 40.4 people could withstand their anger. In the end, in order not to disturb the Lord, only a few people followed behind Hayne. Give him to me. The woman with a chain link on her ankle gave instructions to the officials in the stable in a commanding tone. Her face was hidden in her hood, wearing a dark golden robe without sleeves. On her arms, there was a kiss of dawn, a pattern of the sun in clouds. Doencugiate, governor of lighting. These lowest-level managers, who were seen by the upper class as lowly people rather than officials, quickly knelt down and said nothing more. They never imagined that their superior Hayne's words would be confirmed so quickly. As the highest administrator in charge of the lives and deaths of billions of people, Duan is situated at the pinnacle of thousands of cities in Lighting Chow, and is the only one who can never be seen at the bottom. She can freely establish laws for the entire planet. As long as they do not completely contradict the ideals of the empire. The person behind Dorian kicked Fendo, whose brain had stopped spinning, to the ground. Dorian looked disappointed at the person who was constantly seeking death. You didn't die from the Lord, but the Lord saved you more than once. Fendo has not yet understood the situation, his brain is not enough. The lower-ranking officials kneeling next to them were tingling with this heretical belief, but as the guards holding sharp blades watched closely by the governor's side, they spoke up. I don't know much, but 7 years ago, when you were supposed to be executed, it was bribing me with food to keep you alive. The lower-ranking officials had no idea what vocabulary to use to refer to the mysterious Mr. Lassiter. He said this to Fendo. Fendo opened his eyes wide and wanted to say something, but his throat choked. I don't have the patience to listen to your dog barking anymore. Dorian's guard crushed this head. She was not one of the 40.4 people, but in her long-term relationship with the governor, she also learned the truth 26 years ago. The Lord who gave Li Ting a second life cannot be defiled. Fendo's death was exchanged for the trembling of officials kneeling down like a sieve. Now, please allow me to introduce you to the great Lord, who bestows upon you, me, and even the entire world a great existence of a second life. The governor's female voice, with fanaticism and piety, sang in the ears of 2 lower-ranking officials under the corridor bridge where the painter temporarily resides. In the room formed by a piece of linen and a bridge, with almost no privacy to speak of, the painter held his head and painful memories kept emerging. When he no longer deceives himself, the world will obtain its original truth. 26 years ago. 26 years ago. The painter picked up his pen and began painting on the blank canvas next to him. At the same time, his memories began to clear up and slowly sort them out. He was born in the upper echelons of an ordinary nest city. His father was a renowned painter from several cities, and his mother was his assistant. His family is glamorous, but this is a false impression. Decades ago, this world of nests called a kami was suspected by the empire of being contaminated by heretics. Terror rumors spread among the remaining lower classes at that time, and the number of rebellious words to overthrow the tyranny of the empire surged day by day. The empire has added a kami to the list of extinction order reviews, and according to empire law, this review process will last for a maximum of 100 years. A planetary world is extremely precious, and an empire cannot easily destroy the entire world. This review will continue until the contamination of the heretics has reached the upper level. At that time, the governors had already become pawns of the Asian space evil gods. Subspace is a special field of spiritual and material mixing that emerged from the real universe. The emotions and desires of intelligent life have created the chaotic gods over a long period of time in this special field. The four most powerful chaos masters, or chaos evil gods, are the god of knowledge and wisdom, cunning and extraordinary. The god of strength and courage, fearing abuse. The god of life and eternity, containing dirt. The god of art and beauty, the sin of color. Their true names are unknown, but the clergy of the four major gods seems to create a strong contrast with their well-known names. And they are indeed named after God. The treacherous and ever-changing Lord enjoys all conspiracies and calculations. He enjoys the pleasure of change the most, and all interesting plans, even against him, can please him. He possesses the most powerful magic in the subspace, namely spiritual power. Fear of abuse, the Lord of the Skull, detests spirituality, and is also the mortal enemy of the Lord of all changes. He disdains any roundabout calculations, loves straightforward bravery, strength, tyranny, war, and proves his worth with absolute courage and strength. This is the philosophy he upholds. As long as you muster the courage to swing your sword directly at him, you will gain his joy, transcend the countless demons on the land of terror and abuse, be favored by his gaze, and thus gain the power of terror and abuse. Naku, the lord of plagues, diseases, viruses and bacteria, maggots and distorted flesh are all his masterpieces. He treats all life equally and without distinction. Those who believe in him will receive a different kind of ugly eternal life. All the most difficult plagues on earth come from his stirred cauldron. Finally, there is the sin of lust. Literally speaking, sin of lust seems to be equivalent to desire. In fact, sin of lust encompasses a wide range, symbolizing an insatiable desire that can never be satisfied. The difficulty in filling one's desires is the best interpretation of his priesthood. The power of the four evil gods of chaos has spread from subspace to reality, causing endless suffering. Disease, war, slaughter, trampling on life, desecrating the soul, these are what they and the demons beneath them have been doing. The reason why the empire has always adhered to the truth of the empire and declared atheism is because ordinary people, just knowing this information, will fall into madness and even be contaminated by demons, becoming carriers of demons in the real universe. Even though there are more secondary gods in the subspace, their influence is far less than that of the Chaos Four gods. The tragedy of the painter stems from the father's embrace of lust. The god of art and beauty gazed at this talented middle-aged man and threw an olive branch at him, encouraging him to indulge himself. Excessive drinking, gambling, indulging in more desires, and never having a bottom line. An upper-class family collapsed like this. The painter grew up in domestic violence. When his father threw himself into the arms of lust, his mother joined the suppression of heresy due to her firm belief in the emperor, and ultimately died in battle. The suffocation of despair enveloped the entire Nest City world, and the painter was just a microcosm of it. As for what's different about him, so it's his mock dream, right? His upper-class peers sneered at his dream of showing the sky, ocean, and true earth to the lower class. He was a disgrace to his father, a cowardly mommy boy. He doesn't understand why there is so much malice in this world. When his family was shattered, he was almost desperate, waiting in his room for the arrival of the extinction order. At that time, the governors had all fallen and devoted themselves to evil gods, but it was unclear whether they were corrupt or tyrannical. The governor, who was covered in pus, with worms and maggots rolling in his flesh and blood, was crazily slaughtering his people, roaring in search of a true opponent. The entire nest world is more hellish than hell, more fecal than a pit. The painter heard a voice at that time. That is a new subspace deity, who speaks softly and encourages the painter. He said he had guided 40.4 people to come from the distant starry sky and save this world. Not long after, the painter waited for the 44 people and the army they brought. A rebellion that was not ordered by the Empire has begun. The Iron Nest mountain range has been shattered. When his guidance arrived, the subspace went crazy. The Chaos 4 gods are extremely resistant to the birth of a new deity who is completely fighting against them. An endless stream of chaotic demons emerged from the gap connecting reality and subspace. The survivors huddled in a dim glow, where the Void Shield was located. But in such a fierce battlefield, the Void Shield has long been ineffective, and it goes without saying who that dim radiance belongs to. At that moment, the order of extinction arrived, and the whirlwind torpedoes of the Empire transformed into a curtain of death, falling from the sky. After pressing the button on the massive warship and observing the planet's surface to confirm that the entire world's ecosystem had been completely wiped out, the warship that launched the extinction order also departed. The world has shattered, and painters want to pass on the sky, ocean, and earth to their objects through painting, leaving only a few dead. Even the army brought by those 44 people was extinct. They sat in the dim radiance, as if all their efforts were in vain, putting them to the east. At that moment, his voice rang out again. Do you want them to come back to life? He doesn't care about humans, he's not an emperor. The emperor loves the human race, not anyone standing in front of him. But he does not love the human race, this newly born subspace evil god, only loves those who have successfully entered his sight and been able to stand in front of him. When the painter admits that greed has indeed demanded a lot of things, he fulfilled the painter's wishes. The painter wants everyone to be resurrected and the world of this nest to be restored before the arrival of demons. So the collapsed Steel Mountain Range was rebuilt, and the dust returned to people, even the bottom layer of this nest was wiped away. The painter wants this planet to move away from its original coordinates to avoid being rediscovered by the demons in the subspace. So he had already spent a lot of money moving this planet away from its original location and placed it near an agricultural world. The painter longs for courage to truly go down to the lower levels, to convey the colorful beauty, and to light up all the dead hearts as much as possible. He fulfilled the painter's dream and made modifications to his memory, making him forget that pain. Finally, the crack connecting the real universe and subspace began to slowly heal, being patched by the light. Then, something takes root and sprouts from the patch of light, and finally grows vigorously, bearing fruit. After the fruit was cut open, they knelt down in front of the fruit. The babies he is filled with sadness in the fruit. That was exactly 26 years ago, when Akami was changed to the day of divine descent in the Dawn Court. When the painter breaks free from memory, his painting has already been completed. It's still under the covered bridge, but on the drawing board in front of me, it's those clear memories. This time, his painting is no longer distorted, with various expressions and emotions of the 44 disciples on it. Collapse, joy, rebirth, liberation, and so on. But with his encouragement, the painter lost this memory and embarked on a 26-year journey of pursuing light under the steel dome, heading down to the lower level. Nuskring. He came behind the painter and called out his former name. Master. The painter, who could no longer say Mr. Last, knelt on the ground. He tearfully said, I'm not worth it. I'm as humble as I am. How could I make you pay such a big price? No, Nusgreen, the reason you got these is because you really pleased me. Any gift from the subspace is secretly marked with a price, even I am no exception. Last placed his hand on the painter's head, caressing his divine selection, his first great demon. I didn't give. Nusgreen never felt like he had given anything, he just constantly craving and taking. Nusgreen, you should know that in this cruel world like a pit of dung, there is no heavier price than carrying the burden of kindness and no regrets, there is no more. You have truly pleased me. Last spoke fairly about his dealings with believers, but there was no standard weight used to weigh them. I want to know your name and taboo, please allow me to pray to you until eternity. 26 years later, Nusgreen finally remembered that he should seek his name and taboo from him. I am the collective emotion of all intelligent beings' thirst for light. Last also mustered up the courage to truly acknowledge her identity. I am the desire of light. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Everything goes smoothly. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Everything goes smoothly, I am the desire of light. Last's self-declaration is like the first cry of the birth of lust. However, the sin has opened a huge subspace crack called the Eye of Fear in the center of the entire galaxy. This is the largest gateway between the real universe and subspace, where countless demons and evil spirits whisper and influence the entire human empire. The effect of Lassiter's declaration is not in the real universe, but in the subspace. Chaotic evil gods can occupy a place in the subspace, thus opening up their vast kingdom. The realm of the evil god's desire for light is located in a subspace far away from the four gods, like a narrow pod. The reason it is only so big is because the desire for light only needs to be so big. In that field, there is a space the size of a planet, with the highest point being a pale throne. Praise the true Lord, the great desire for light, I believe in the owner of everything. Under the covered bridge, Hain and Nusgreen knelt down at the same time, willingly offering their utmost loyalty and sincerity. During the period of painting in Nusgreen, Last brought Hain to the foot of the covered bridge. He could clearly perceive the pain of the son of lust, and he came to comfort Nusgreen. Fortunately, Nusgreen recovered quickly. Lord, I want to leave lighting and go to a more distant world to sow your light. Nusgreen pleaded. Last tried to persuade him, you can do the same in lighting. No, Lord, there is a place that truly needs me. Nusgreen has already figured through everything in the past, he has a profound understanding of many things, and a clearer understanding of the Lord's thoughts. Last withdrew her outstretched hand and her expression darkened slightly. For the first ray chaser he discovered in this world with a pure soul, he had a strong sense of calf protection in Nusgreen. Therefore, he cut off the hand of the painter that Sai extended, even at a considerable cost. When will you depart? You can take a break for a while. I can't wait to declare your glory to the world. As the son of the desire for light, I will light up the darkness in those hearts and reality. Nusgreen's fanaticism is no less than anyone's, and there is always a hysterical elegance in his fanaticism. I know, by the way, Nusgreen, do you know my holy number? Of course, your holy number is 4 and 40.4. My holy number represents that the pursuer of light will eventually have everything going smoothly. Last turned around and left this section of the corridor bridge. Before leaving, he reached out and stopped Hain from continuing to follow him. He needs a little time to be quiet. Hain and Nusgreen stood up after he had been away for a long time. I don't know how to face the Lord's grace, but if I were you, I wouldn't leave him so quickly. Hain remembered when he was in the official stable earlier. The host used a cold joke to soothe his nervousness. He saw the Lord and was unwilling to let Nusgreen leave here. Nusgreen's eyes were filled with sadness. Mr. Hain, you don't know the Lord's gift to me is too great, where is this? This is under his feet. I pursue my dreams here, seemingly obstructed, but in reality, there is no risk. I will always be under his protection, and no accidents will happen. For 20.6 years, he has been watching me, and you have also delivered paper and paint to me through some people. You even want to change the Lord's mind and find a better environment by letting me live in the upper class. Because of his kindness towards me, he doesn't want to see me endure more suffering, he doesn't want to see me travel far and encounter real setbacks in unknown places. But he will feel pain due to the suffering of those who possess the essence of a pursuer of light, which is the sorrow he must bear as a desire for light. Mr. Hayne, I want to alleviate the pain for the Lord, even if it's a little less. Nusgreen's tears were completely uncontrollable, as tears streamed down his cheeks and hit his palm. His appearance has also changed at this moment. The painter stood next to Hayne in a brand new posture, only one head shorter than this tall thunder warrior. Under his light golden short hair, his handsome face resembles that of a person in a painting, but it is not very elegant due to crying. Nusgreen could feel his current strength, and as he fell into an uncontrollable state to complete this painting called the Day of Divine Descent, he sacrificed his past and, through that destruction and rebirth, received the blessing of his desire for light. In order to provide support for my long journey, he even gave me, a wanderer away from home, enough strength. This is his power, through which I can feel the pain of the pursuer of light. But this is a drop of water in the ocean of pain that he bears. Mr. Hayne, I don't have time to stay here anymore. The painter finished speaking and bowed to the Thunder Warrior who came not far from Star River 26 years ago to protect him, then walked towards one of his paintings. He walked as if entering the real world in the painting called Anchoran Agricultural World Plain, until he disappeared at the end of the horizon in the painting. Hayne was deeply moved by Nusgreen's sobs, and it wasn't until the other portraits were swept into the Anchoran Plain by the strong wind that he regained consciousness. So, that's why, Nusgreen, you became the first one he chose. Wishing you a pleasant journey and all the best. Last's residence on the lower level was carefully selected by the 44 disciples. It is a standalone building, rarely found in the lower levels of the entire nest. From the perspective of imperial rule, lower-class people do not deserve this kind of treatment. The unease of the child about to travel makes the god of the pursuer of light furrow his brows and find it difficult to show his face. On the way home from Last, Osiris bent over and came to his side to release his master. You have finally announced your arrival to the Milky Way, my lord, everything will be bathed in your glory. Osiris, I remember telling you that I have many flaws, and the most serious one is that I have almost no patience. This has troubled Last's past life, and in this lifetime, there have also been many manifestations. No, Lord, your flaws are not as many as you think, and you are not as bad as you imagine. You have no idea how smooth and magnificent you are. As the leader of the 40.4 disciples, Osiris had the most say in this matter. I can't bear Nusgreen's departure, but there's nothing I can do. Guang wants to reveal his achievements over the past 26 years. He said, for the past 26 years, I have been thinking about whether it is possible to save the world without any sacrifice, without anyone else giving their blood and soul, family and brothers. I put this into action, and during that time, I still resisted myself as a collective emotion of the longing for light. I couldn't be certain of my beliefs, so I tried and then I failed once, twice, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. My strength is not worth mentioning. I have made up for it in repeated failures and minimized the losses. I began to reflect on where the problem was, and eventually realized that many times I only believed in myself, relied on myself, and believed that I could solve all the problems. But at that time, I was just a coward who dared not admit to being a god. And before me, there were already 4.5 experienced in this area. Old folks. Even if those old things have to rely on external forces, why do I feel that with my own efforts, I can change this world? So you generously chose to bring this glorious mission to your people. Osiris was filled with excitement, as he always knew what kind of existence his lord was. He lacks patience and wants to solve these hardships as quickly as possible. He fights alone, only to shed the blood of those he cherishes. He resists his identity because he is afraid of failure, so that the pursuers of light can no longer see the light. He can be selfish enough not to love the whole world, but he can selflessly love those who pursue light with him as their guiding principle. 26 years ago, under the guidance of the self-proclaimed evil god the disciples thought they were selling their souls to a space, but who knew that their souls had only entered the light from darkness? No, Osiris, I feel particularly despicable. On the one hand, I have to let people like Nusgring who can receive my blessings change the world and expand the number of ray chasers. On the other hand, I don't want him to face a real crisis. The core of this sixth evil god in the subspace was once a mortal soul, and he felt that he was not as strong. Lord, as you said to us earlier, from the moment we make a covenant with you, our souls will no longer be owned by ourselves, so. What about death? Our souls are in the hands of the sixth evil god, the desire of light. We will return our souls to the desire of light. Osiris learned a lot with last as his goal, and then firmly returned these things to last. This is the wonderful loop between God and his pursuer of light. Yes, your souls are in my hands. Last carefully glanced at her most precious wealth, which shone brightly in the darkness. He finally smiled and said, let's invite them to dinner together. Finally, with the sixth evil god in this world, we can start changing Li Ting. The current situation here makes me feel very uncomfortable. By the way, let's choose the place for the dinner at the church. The next thing to discuss is a major matter. The transformation of Li Ting will be noticed by the Empire. As another dominant civilization ruling the galaxy after the Spirit Clan, the Empire will not allow anyone to provoke this necessary rule. In this regard, some of the 44 disciples were experienced. This is communion. Osiris quickly realized the problem. Unfortunately, the Son of Desire has gone on a long journey, otherwise it would have been a perfect family feast. Osiris quickly left the god he served and went to contact other disciples. This news would be the greatest surprise for the disciples who had always wanted to see him face to face, and he also wanted to see their joy. Osiris was well aware that the gathering would begin before nightfall, and he knew some of the Lord's habits. Most disciples were overjoyed upon hearing his message. Until he arrived at the nominal supreme ruler of this planet, Governor Doan. As a mentally sound female ruler, Dorian has a more meticulous mind in this area and can discover things that Osiris cannot see. Please repeat the Lord's words. When Dorian heard failures 1,000 times, 10,000 times, and even hesitated to speak, her expression did not change, but she covered her mouth and bit her teeth on the blocked lower lip. Osiris finally realized something was wrong. What's going on? Dorian took out a piece of paper from a pile of papers on the governor's desk. This is a statistical document issued by the Empire 9 years ago, and at that time she didn't understand what it meant. For 9 years, things related to this statistical document have been happening, but she has not realized where the problem lies. Osiris took the document from her hand, and then the bishop painfully wanted to tear it apart, but couldn't do anything about it. He pretended to hand the document back to Dorian. He has borne all our sins for us, as he promised when selling his soul. These things should have been done by us, but he has broken his promise. Dorian is quite dissatisfied with the Lord, but her loyalty and joy towards him have increased. By the way, I remember what day it is today. Osiris shifted the heavy topic, and during the Eucharist, he didn't want to face the Lord with a bitter melon face. What day? Dorian didn't react a bit. You don't know, this is normal. The Lord gave me your departure time back then because everyone was in different star systems, so their departure times were not the same. In fact, based on Terra Day, our departure time is April 4th at 4:44 p.m. Although it's already autumn in lighting, Terra, it's April 4th now. Osiris carefully collected the paper document and placed it in his arms. Give it back to me. Dorian reached out and demanded it. You haven't received it for a long time, but now you still want it. You think so? Osiris ran away without giving himself any face as his first disciple. After Osiris left, Dorian looked at the anklet. Are you celebrating our birthday? When the 44 disciples sold their souls, their second life began, and from that moment on, they were reborn. That day was very important to them, but their thoughts were very chaotic during that time, and most people couldn't remember that time. Fortunately, the Lord remembered it for them. The time of the nest is difficult to calculate, after all, no one can see the sky. But as a former mechanical bishop, Osiris was extremely sensitive to the unit of time. Li Ting's side began to turn to a place that was not illuminated by stars. A huge long table was placed in the church, and when the 44 disciples arrived, they easily found their place. The dim light of the candle illuminated the church where the lights were turned off. Hain looked at his seat with some hesitation. His seat was padded with several books, but in fact, he was very tall. Until the table and the chair next to it inexplicably rose high. Ha ha ha, Hain, you. Joyful children's voices echoed around Hain. That comes from another disciple who met once before selling their souls to the Lord, by the emperor's side. The silent nun, who had a deep grudge, was now a beautiful little girl with a braid of sheep horns and even small freckles on her face. After hearing her own voice, Sister Silent realized that she had become a child like Hain in front of her. Not only the two of them, but all the disciples are the same. Honestly climbing onto his seat, Hain began to wonder how inconvenient his body was. He also felt that the books on the mat were a bit missing. Their mentality even returned to that of children, with a hint of innocence and liveliness. A few disciples lay on the table, and Osiris, who was also a child, became angry and embarrassed, jumping on the high back chair to accuse them of not paying attention to their manners. The disciples made faces directly at Osiris. At this moment, a figure pushed a huge cake and walked out from behind the door. He scanned the circle of little brats. They all experienced various hardships during their true childhood. Even after reaching adulthood, they never had the luxury of others celebrating their own birthdays. Guan Yu lifted the cake knife with one hand and took out a stack of small pointed hats with the other. Who wants a birthday hat? Who wants a small cake? Me. 44 small hands were raised. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. My Desire for Light. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 6. Amidst Anxiety. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Amidst Anxiety. Finally, with the efforts of Astat, Alibaba, Avanti, as well as Avatar and Absolute people, lived happily together. Last closed the book in her hand, which was actually blank on every page, and prepared to end today's joyful time in 44 pairs of expectant little eyes. Telling stories to his disciples full of nonsense, fortunately they were able to listen with great enthusiasm. Let's talk about another one. Some disciples who are greedy for this kind of warmth act coquettishly. Okay, let me tell you a story about magic beans. 10 minutes later, the story came to an end, and the books resting on the high back chairs disappeared one by one. The disciples returned to their adult state. My mind has turned back into an adult, and some disciples feel ashamed of their previous coquettishness. Especially Governor Doan, she has acted coquettishly more than once. But that feeling always left her with an endless aftertaste. A few disciples stayed behind, tidying up the chaos in the church. Last stood up and left the church, while Osiris followed suit behind him. I'm a bit uneasy. Light desires worry heavily. What do you mean? Nuskring won too easily. From the start to the end of the rebellion in the world of Anchorin, the time spent on it was not even as much as our dinner party. Last saw this victory even deeper. You knew something was wrong, but because you were afraid of hitting him, you didn't explain it to him. Osiris can understand the implied meaning of last. Yes, he led those people to victory. He correctly identified the sin of lust, and he was even more aware that after his missionary actions, he was not suitable to continue fighting with those fire dragon sons. He is so excellent, with a clear mind, possessing all the meanings of perfection I have bestowed upon him. Last's face slowly darkened. Osiris realized the seriousness of the problem. Not many people in the Empire now know the truth about chaos and subspace. Even a stat, when facing demons, only thinks that it is a biological weapon created by a heretic civilization. The Emperor wanted to nip the pollution of the four gods on the Milky Way in its infancy and promoted the Emperor's truth. This situation will continue for a longer time, before which even some genetic pathogens know very little about the subspace, and even do not know about the existence of the subspace evil gods. That's also why Nusgring had to leave the salamanders after praising the desire for light, and his words would be of great concern to the Empire. In addition, it is very likely to be exploited by evil gods in the subspace to take advantage of the situation. Nusgring performed exceptionally well, displaying wisdom, perfection, and courage to the fullest. He was capable of attracting the attention of at least 3 chaotic gods. Nusgring's perfect handling made Last feel that he might not be able to do so well, and he couldn't find a reason to strike down his offspring. You generously gave him enough strength, and his easy victory is not unreasonable. Osiris still offered comfort, and the next focus was on transforming lighting and making the Empire less hostile towards lighting's changes. If the Empire were to completely target lighting, Last's only choice would be to take the entire planet into subspace and return to his pod-chaotic realm. I acknowledge his excellence, Osiris, but I have failed countless times, yet he succeeded once, and so briefly. I'm not jealous of him. My countless combat experiences have shown me that after I rejected the olive branches thrown by those 4 old people a long time ago, they were crazily targeting me. They don't allow me to succeed, so every attempt I make will be targeted as much as possible. Fortunately, my efforts are not without success. Their targeting of me led to a weakened offensive in other places, which gave humanity some advantages. It was only then that the Emperor acknowledged the rationality of my probing and gave preferential treatment to material providers. I have been the target all along, so I am very clear that when Nusgring walks out, he will become another target. I am worried that he will become the target of public criticism, so I am not confident that he will leave. Now, what worries me the most is that the arrows aimed at him intentionally deviate from him, trying to cultivate his arrogance and then completely knock him down at a critical moment. I am very clear about what those 4 old people are good at. Those demons can delay wars for a long time and easily reignite. Nusgring was not targeted too much, he even faced only one lecherous demon, a sneak attack. It's unreasonable for those demons who could have dragged on the war for another year or 2 to disappear like this. The light desire illuminated the plan of the lustful sin. Say Ni is deliberately making Nusgring perfect. His impersonation is only testing Nusgring's loyalty, and he does not have much confidence in his own success. Then, he made Nusgring a great success, indulging his perfection, like a pervert growing a flower. And the treacherous Chi was also very interested in Nusgring's wisdom, and the fear of abuse also shone brightly at Nusgring's courage to punch and smash the projection of lust. 3 shameless old people are interested in their own big demon, and of course Last will worry. After all, he has experienced many things. Although he is a beginner in war, I don't think he can't handle setbacks in the world. Osiris mentioned the experiences of the painter 26 years ago, as well as his heart-refining journey of wandering in various lower-tier cities over the past 26 years. I hope so. Let me talk to someone who can decide the direction of Li Ting's change. The person Lassiter mentioned is someone who refuses to become a god. Yes, my lord. Osiris bowed and quietly stepped down to start dealing with some matters, while also rehearsing the diplomatic etiquette that Li Ting should have in advance. Last's gaze began to spread towards the depths of the starry sky. His incarnation, also known as the material provider, appeared on a certain planet. This is an alien civilization that has fallen into the embrace of sin. Just now, the Emperor destroyed it, and at this moment, the human army is destroying all kinds of pollution. The Emperor, the human leader who is said to be able to become the most perfect image of the person in front of him, is sitting alone in the largest library of alien civilizations at this moment. After last arrived, he appeared outside the library. The gatekeeper's forbidden army has become somewhat accustomed to the sudden appearance of this group of light, which often visits when the material provider first appears. Last stood in front of the door, with the Imperial guards bowing their heads slightly, showing respect for the collaborators of the Emperor. Please come in. The Emperor's attitude towards Last is hard to say, but he is on guard against this young deity. The Imperial army pushed open the door and Last walked in. In order to show that he and the Emperor are at least on the same front in some aspects, he expressed his position. The trend of color and evil is like a raging beast, harming the Emperor. The Emperor. Last saw the Emperor at the end of the library, and his expression suddenly became somewhat strange. Because the Emperor was there, flipping through the customs of the alien forms. The image of a human leader is not special in the eyes of Last. Sitting amidst a pile of impurities and looking at an indescribable alien notebook, what do you make Guan Yu think? Here, there are riddles from Terra-Sin, so I'm not interested in aliens. The Emperor closed this book, and the last bit of spiritual power ignited these books. Endless Taliesin, a space undead who is passionate about collecting the history of the Milky Way. Before humans became the hegemons of the Milky Way, the last one to rule the galaxy was the Spirit Clan, which was once a subordinate of the Ancient Saint. The Ancient Sage perished in the war with the material god Star God in the real universe, while the Space Undead was a servant of Star God at that time. The Space Undead was once deceived by one of the most powerful 3-star gods, replacing their weak flesh with mechanical bodies, which made them look quite bony, hence they are also known as pork ribs. Just like the Empire also likes to call the tall but slender spirit race with towering braids Duya. The Emperor chose to cooperate with this pork rib because the other party had no interest in conquering the universe or taking action against the Empire. Terra-Sin was not keen on participating in wars, he was only interested in collecting key things or people from historical events. What did he say? I can't tell you. The idle conversation between the two enemies of the 4 gods ends here. Guan Yu expressed his purpose for this visit. I need to make a world independent. The Empire once destroyed it, and with the order of extinction, I resurrected that world. It should belong to me. Last's attitude is very tough. The Emperor did not refuse, and as Last's incarnation repeatedly acted as a target at the forefront of the battlefield to attract firepower and enable his great expedition to overcome obstacles in more places, he was the biggest beneficiary. Handing over an already destroyed world to Light Desire is a cost-effective transaction. The Emperor had no intention of directly confronting an evil god who could roam freely in the material universe, and taking lighting away was Last's bottom line. The starting point of emperors is always the overall interests of humanity. Sure, Mikado will quickly connect with your world, and you can change it to the way you want it to be. It's just a new garden world about to be born, it's not a big deal. Accompany me for a walk. The Emperor warmly invited Last to travel with him. 2 people walked out of the collapsed library in the flames, and on an alien planet, newly rescued and captive humans were being reviewed. Their devoted submission to the Emperor is imaginable. Both Last and the Emperor did not reveal their well-known features while wandering this land. Finally, they came to several rescued humans. Do you know why I can't trust you completely? The Emperor looked at those few humans and turned a blind eye to the tragedy in front of them, but was worried that the entire human race would completely transform into that shape under the shadow of the 4 gods. Because you are afraid that a god like me will go crazy at some point in the future due to excessive paranoia, disappointment with the dark side and corruption of the Empire, disgust with your ruthlessness, and destroy this cold and ruthless universe, along with your beloved humans. Guan Yu's answer is very straightforward. Then he asked back, so, do you know why I can't trust you completely? The Emperor did not answer, he had already shown the reason why Last rejected him. Two rescued children arrived in front of two non-human beings, and they looked back and forth and circled around these two people who were not wearing power armor, curious. "What's your name?" Last crouched down, took out a handful of candy, and asked one of the children. "My name is Makabaka. After opening the beautiful candy paper and storing it carefully, the child took a taste that he had never tried before and was careful. Last choked on the name. Makabaka asked politely and vaguely. "What about you? Which legion do you come from? Do you have the right to see the great emperor?" Makabaka has received all the descriptions of human leaders from the emperor's angel, which makes this child yearn for the light of humanity and also makes him want to become a powerful angel wearing power armor. Last did not hesitate at all, as he pointed to the emperor and began to fabricate. "My name is Wuxi, his name is Igubigu, and we come from the Garden Baby Legion. He is the 5th baby, and I am the 6th baby. Emperor. Do you want to hear what you're saying? What are the other 4 babies? Who is first? Who is the first baby?" Makabaka also asked the emperor questions. The sound of desire even reached the subspace. "I'll have to fight before I know." The dramatic stirring of discord here ends here, and after distributing candy to these children again, the 6th evil god leaves this planet. The emperor looked up and looked straight at the bleak green sunset here. "I will never, never, become a god. The empire doesn't need gods." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The present generation of pathogens. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The present generation of pathogens. After returning to lighting, it was already midnight, and Last began to reflect late at night. The disciple who added tea and poured water next to him stood quietly, trying to disguise himself as a dead object. Since the Lord acknowledged his identity as an evil god, the 44 disciples no longer needed various excuses and reasons to come to him like in the past. After feeling dejected for a while, Guam wanted to turn his head to look at the disciples beside him. "What do you think of your chief mentor?" The disciples from the assassin's court have a curvaceous figure, and the tight-fitting assassin's uniform paired with a skull mask is a nightmare for all rulers of the empire. The assassin's court is a very important organization in the empire, controlled by the Prime Minister Mikado. And this Mikado was a friend that the emperor had known a long time ago. During the time when Gen was still lost in the galaxy, Mikado was the most powerful spiritual person in the entire empire. Because the emperor is not regarded as a human here in Last, and insists on being stronger than spiritual power in the non-human realm. He only desires this 6th evil god to be superior. This assassin disciple is a soulless or untouchable person, and according to common sense, any spiritual energy will be devoured by her side. The spiritual power of desire is different from the other 4 gods, and his spiritual power is more inclined to create matter. The difference in spiritual abilities between the assassin disciple and the silent nun disciple is not significant, as the silent nun is also soulless. It's just that the assassins have undergone a certain degree of physical modification, and they can even assassinate interstellar warriors like a stat. The mission of the assassin's court has always been to eliminate all corruption in the empire for the emperor. When Mikado realized that corruption was most severe in the empire, these assassins would be sent there, inviting the rulers to step down and replacing them with someone else. Unfortunately, the empire's performance is second to none in the entire galaxy, and the people who replace it may be stronger than before, but they are not much better. The assassin's court is basically only female, just like a stat only has males. The mind of the assassin's disciple was not sound, and although Last had restored her a lot, it was really difficult for her to express her opinion on it. During the cake battle, in order not to appear too different from others, she even smeared herself with cream. Because her instincts during the battle kept her from all attacks. Osiris. Last jumped onto the table, touched the head of the assassin's disciple, gestured for her to rest, and stated that she had no intention of blaming her. Although the assassin's disciples had reached the limit of their control over their bodies that mortals could not control, they also stiffened due to Lassiter's head touch. Osiris rushed over at the sound, and the sand table of the great expedition had already appeared on the table. Last looked at the sand table and felt unhappy. "My lord." Osiris lowered his head and looked at the sand table. The assassin's disciples quietly left the room, arrived at the corner, touched their own heads, and then disappeared into the shadows. "He hit me." Last remembered the previous emperor's generous invitation. "He didn't hold his breath, he mocked my philosophy. He told me that the sacrifice of the great expedition is necessary to save the next world, so that those I love can run under the sunset. His actions are like the smelting of the nest city, vigorously carrying out the construction of necessary items, and then the by-products of the smelting, namely the artificially synthesized starch blocks, become people's food. He compared my actions to the unexpected effects of his actions, and he didn't understand the difference in our views. Osiris just acts as a quiet listener, knowing what he should do now. Is the empire very powerful? Yes, it is strong for all races in this galaxy, whether it is the previous generation of galactic hegemons who have not fallen behind, the newly awakened pork ribs, or those alien civilizations that will eventually be crushed by the great expedition. In their eyes, the empire was too powerful. An evil god named Emperor, with his unparalleled army of followers, burned, killed, and looted the entire galaxy, engaging in brutal and oppressive rule. This is their position. My position is that the Emperor's general direction is correct, but I cannot agree with some of his ideas. His salvation is only temporary, and when he leaves the planet he saved, those who have just gained glory will soon return to their past days. Endless labor, even before dying from exhaustion, the bones have been ordered by the nobles of the empire to be fed to dogs. Do I agree with him? He can't insinuate to me like this, I don't have that much hatred towards him. He agreed that Li Ting could deliver it to me, but I don't think things will go so smoothly. The strength of the empire and its flaws are simply two extremes. Any absurd thing that happens in the empire is not surprising to Last. So, orders are pure when issued by the emperor, and there may be ideas in Mikado's place, but they will not be mixed with anything else. It's just that after transmitting this message to the star area of lighting through the astrologer's subspace, it's hard to say anything. The person who came to lighting was likely a fool, and Last was extremely disgusted with dealing with these fools, but couldn't avoid it. So, those who come here are witty, so let's take a look at the scene of Li Ting's independence. If they're not witty, they'll just cut him off. I'll take my head and ask if this is the attitude of the empire. Last is an evil god, the sixth evil god. His mercy is only effective for those who pursue light. He is the representative of all positive desires, but it cannot be said that he is harmless to anyone. His words to the emperor reveal his madness. He abhors the Milky Way, which is causing him pain all the time. The officials of Li Ting, who was given by the emperor, thought they were making things difficult. He cut off these things, and it was not him who was wrong. He should take his head and ask the emperor what he meant. Osiris finally remembered the reason for his name change. The will of the Lord has been given, and under judgment, there will be no mercy. It was also at this moment that Last overheard something. As a god who can freely enter and exit the subspace and the real universe, many things cannot be hidden from him. How effective is such provocation? That's right, with a sadistic personality. In subspace, the chaotic realm of terror and abuse. On the high mountain of skulls piled up by billions of mortals, the towering figure of a black mountain sits on the brass throne. His helmet and armor still have some traces of spiritual power. Countless terrifying demons lay beneath the skull mountain, like maggots. Fear of abuse and treachery are undoubtedly hostile relationships, but often they have to come together just to plot against the cursed one who refuses to ascend to the heavens. After the light desires to come to life and create a creature that is favored by evil gods, they also gathered in front of the brass throne. As for why it is on the brass throne rather than elsewhere, perhaps it is because phobia is a dead house that refuses to go out. While discussing matters in front of the brass throne, the Lord of the Skull was enduring these two guys whom he had always disliked, including lust, treachery, and terror. The cunning conspiracies and spiritual abilities are most hated by the god of strength and courage. Secondly, the fear of abuse and hatred towards sex sins overlap with their religious duties in many places, so they will compete for the same believers. The wars and life and death struggles of mortals will attract the gaze of terror and lust. But what terror likes is a life that proves its value through courage and force. What Say-ni likes is the pleasure and enjoyment of killing, torturing, and cruelly killing others. This is like, the fear of abuse is to catch fish for the sake of eating, and the lustful sin is to catch fish for the sake of indescribable reasons, and then ask the nun, do you know the joy of fish when you are not a fish? Terrorist believers like to challenge the strong to become stronger, while lecherous believers only bully the weak and isolated to satisfy the pleasure of killing. Whether to discuss matters or conspiracies with Say-ni and Ruchi, the fear of abuse was already unbearable. The sixth evil god threw a sentence during their discussion, that'll have to be beaten before we know. The fear of abuse pointed directly at Ruchi's nose and stood up. He didn't take action immediately, but only captured the guy after officially declaring war. The Lord of all Changes unleashed his psychic smoke grenade and left with fear and abuse, causing his lust to move faster. Anyway, everyone has already discussed the matter of the fallen light desire demon. After success, we will see who can win over Nusgreen. The treacherous retreat without a fight made the terror of abuse even more infuriated, and his anger had nowhere to vent. Scabland. Terror swept through the demons at the foot of the Skull Mountain, causing immediate disappointment. He once had his most beloved demon, who led his army to conquer chaos and the real universe. It has repeatedly killed in the chaotic realm of other chaotic gods, causing the enemy's demon army to be defeated again and again. It's just a pity that Scabland was deceived by the whispers of the traitor time and time again. The favorite demon of the god of courage ambushed its owner from behind, and then scraped off a little paint from its armor. At that moment, the anger of terror echoed throughout the entire subspace, and with one strike, it sent Scabland flying for 8 days and 8 nights in this chaotic place of time and space in the subspace. The flames attached to the terrifying blow burned Scarbrand even more. Since then, terror has lost its proud demon, and the realm of terror chaos is no longer open for Scabland. I need a new demon commander. New. A better one. The most powerful son of terror who is destined to conquer everything for me. The gaze of terror did not linger in the subspace, but cast towards the real universe. To be honest, he has little expectation of these demons. The Chaos 4 gods once teamed up with the Emperor to create 20.1 chess pieces using the characteristics of subspace and the genes of the Emperor and a human woman. The Chaos 4 gods integrate the essence of 20 secondary gods into these 20.1 pieces. Subsequently, the Emperor took sole possession of the spoils of war that should have been evenly distributed. Fortunately, the Emperor's ruthlessness disappointed the woman. She summoned the 4 gods of chaos, and the subspace storm appeared in the place where Terra stored the 20.1 chess pieces, blowing them towards various corners of the galaxy. The target of terror and abuse is precisely those 20.1 chess pieces. Show me your courage. The scanning of humanity by terror and abuse quickly yielded results. He was on a desert-like planet and was pleasantly surprised to see a child with wings on his back who had just crawled out of the incubator. Even though it was just a newborn, its face remained unchanged and it tore open the head of a mutated beast with both hands, saving several severely injured and panicked mutants. He was even more contemplating how to kill the remaining mutated beasts. The enemy he faced was not the one he had just killed, but a group of cooperative predators. The innate courage is worthy of praise. Phobia immediately called the subspace phone number for those who eat alone. Give me one of your children, and I will stand on your side, fighting against those 3 cowards with you and Guan Yu. Huang Laohan, who eats alone, didn't reply a word, cutting off the subspatial connection. The ferocious head under the helmet of terror roared with terror, causing all the demons in the realm of terror to panic and lose consciousness in his roar. This made him even more disappointed with these maggots. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Unique Luck. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Unique Luck last dug out her ear. The terrifying guy roared so loudly that he startled the listener in the corner. Fear is not enough, but rather similar to, why are you shouting so loudly? Osiris doesn't know what the Lord is doing. He used to be the bishop of the Martian Mechanical Church and had some knowledge about subspaces. When Raster murmured to himself, he mentioned terror and cruelty, which made Osiris vaguely guess that his main god was scanning the 4 false gods in the subspace. What? Are you talking about eavesdropping? Peeping? Heresy. Accept the trial. The Emperor's most beloved, powerful, and perfect son was born on the second satellite of a planet called Bar. Phoebe saw him and proposed a deal to the Emperor. As long as the Emperor was willing to give this son to Phoebe, Phoebe was willing to stand on the side of the real universe and complete a 3-on-3 confrontation with me and the Emperor. Last is a bit disgusted by the mindless fear of abuse. I'm afraid there's more than one pseudo-god who covets that Emperor's son. Osiris vaguely guessed from the Lord's description that it was a life that could satisfy the Chaos 4 gods and the God Emperor. Yes, Naku, Sei-Ni, and Xie-Chi are all satisfied with his wisdom, strong vitality, and the beautiful image he represents. The transaction proposed by Terror may seem very attractive, but the Emperor thought it through very thoroughly, and the possibility of this transaction is 0. Firstly, the Emperor's attitude towards the 4 gods was extremely hateful. He would not become a god, did not acknowledge himself as a god, and even more so, hated the evil gods in the subspace. Secondly, the Emperor's vigilance towards me is even greater than that of the tyrant. He does not feel that he and I can fully cooperate. In addition, the tyrant and I cannot cooperate. My hostility towards the clergy of tyrants and perverts even makes it difficult to describe my hatred towards these 2 evil gods. Thirdly, that child holds great significance for the fate of the Emperor and is the most powerful among the emperors who are determined not to betray him. Finally, he will never set a precedent to trade with evil gods. As long as he starts, even if he will not have any further behavior, those who worship him may feel extremely disappointed with his behavior. Even some people may imitate him, trade with the evil gods in the subspace, and eventually fall into the arms of the evil gods from beginning to end. The desire for light does not believe that fear and abuse can obtain angels. Angels are born with the ability to predict, and their ability to make independent judgments and love for others makes them extremely resentful of fear and abuse. So, Lord, as a true deity, do you have no thoughts on that perfect life? Osiris wants to recruit that powerful existence as the second heir of the light desire. No, Osiris, I never had that idea. Everyone has an indispensable position. In fact, compared to the other children of the Emperor, the angel who is loved by the Chaos 4 gods and has small wings. At present, he doesn't need me, and I won't help him, let alone have the idea of taking him as my heir. Osiris, I once had a period of life, in another 2K era, during which I had never been lucky. Even if insignificant little luck comes to me, it is difficult for me to hold on to it. No matter how hard I have tried in difficult situations, they will still miss out on me. When I was very young in that period of life, around 10 or 11 years old, I found a stone by the river. Its appearance was not impressive, but I always felt that it was different. When I am sad and upset, I will stick it to my face, and tears will wet the yellow-white stone layer on its surface. When Guan wanted to say this, his expression was quite desolate. That's a sacred object. Osiris thought so. Guan Yu continued, but during that period of life, my emotions were different from ordinary people. I had a lot of stereotyped behaviors, and I would even fall into excitement or mania for no reason. In a curious heart, I threw the stone from a high place and repeated this operation dozens of times. I think it may hate my betrayal. When it cracks open and turns into two halves, the thin stone skin contains the most magnificent and profound blue and purple. It is a jade or gemstone that I am still unknown to, and there are no broken lines inside, like a crystal clear flesh. A child in his early teens regretted breaking it open from that day on. Later, after it was inexplicably lost, the child began to realize what he had missed. That was the greatest fortune of my life, Osiris, but due to my foolishness and ignorance, I still missed it. Although such things kept repeating in later life, they did not have a profound memory. Luck has always had nothing to do with me, so I have no expectations for anything like lucky draws. I don't need to get close to the child who keeps the other old people's eyes fixed on him, and secondly, I don't think I can get him, master. Osiris's face was ugly, and his lips turned white and trembling. But this life has surprised me a lot. The contemplation of desire stopped, and now he smiled. Osiris's emotions also eased with his changes. Because I have been lucky in my life, even if it's just the only luck. If the light desires, Osiris will make up his mind to obtain the luck he said for the Lord. Perhaps he is assigning a task to his disciples. He sees a treasure in this universe, which surprises him inexplicably. Lord, I will bring you that luck. The disciples composed of your holy number will spare no effort. Light is about to laugh. No, Osiris, I got that luck 26 years ago, I already got it. Osiris's brain was blank, and he lifted his head in confusion before finally meeting the affirmative eyes of his master. I think none of you 45 are worse than the winged child of the emperor. In the radiance, Osiris knelt down, and the first disciple, who had been displaying a calm and steady image, wept bitterly. In the shadow, the guardian disciple, who should have been like a dead object, quickened his heart and caressed his head again. Outside the door, the soon-to-be independent Empress Li Ting raised her hand and stopped in mid-air, unable to knock on the door. Instead, her already open heart was filled with something. Behind her were other disciples. They just discussed that Li Ting can be independent of others, and there is one thing that is necessary. That is, after Li Ting became independent, he would never have a second belief, even if that belief was an emperor. They want to declare to the Milky Way that the Dawn Court has its own God, the greatest God. In order to show their determination, the disciples came together and wanted to say to last, Lord, it's getting cold. It's time to add some clothes. But now, the master directly added a small cotton jacket to each of them. And he said, I already have you to keep me warm. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. You are not loyal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. You are not loyal Salichi Nankovidu, a young ruler. He is the governor of Naishing, a planet that exists as a major hub in this star region. The two airports of Naishing, one built on the back of Naishing's satellite, and the other, in space, are composed of mechanical peaks with life. In the 30th millennium, the rule of the empire was quite chaotic, and the human ruler, the emperor, was busy with a great expedition. He didn't do a very good job of settling in before resisting the outside world. Every time a planet is conquered, the empire will not intervene too much and may even retain the power of the world. As long as these worlds do the following things well, even if their rule is cruel, the empire led by the emperor will not interfere. Believe in the truth of the empire. We will never tolerate anomalies and heretics. Impose a tax on the empire. The empire has the right to determine what role your world is based on the strategic map. This has turned many planets into hub stars, as well as into agricultural worlds and more worlds into nesting cities. This also made last dislike the emperor. A life that is too cruel, making an ordinary person live in an empire is actually no different from living in hell. People at different levels have different opinions on this. The common people in the Nest City are very busy with electricity, food, and family medical expenses. Only when the Star Realm army comes to the world for temporary rest, are they fortunate enough to become workers in the city that receives the Star Realm army and rest for a while to pay respects to the soldiers of the Empire. The Imperial class is strict, and the Star Army and the Commoners are two different classes, even if the former has a shorter time as a consumable than the latter. They eagerly awaited in the crowd, bustling, as they saw the army with standard weapons and handsome military uniforms marching through the streets with their various heavy weapons, as if carrying the scorched earth atmosphere of the previous world. Many children have become a member of the Star Realm army in such envy, one after another. There are not many civilians in an agricultural world that is suitable for transforming the entire planet into plains, while there are other agricultural worlds that are not suitable for transforming into plains, and the civilians there suffer unbearably. Only 10% of the things they plant belong to themselves, and they will be condemned by the imperial nobles for being disloyal to the empire and unfaithful to the emperor due to illness, fatigue, or any natural or man-made disasters that prevent them from working. In order to ensure this cruel class rule, those who cannot cultivate will be used by the nobility to feed their dogs after or even before death. The most disgusting thing is that these nobles would bring the deceased and their families together to watch this funeral. The high-pressure rule of empires is mostly like this, using generations of cruelty to make newcomers feel normal and feel that they were born this way. Even if someone awakens their consciousness, they will still be unable to resist the empire due to their own weakness. This is also why some people choose to immerse themselves in the embrace of the evil gods in the subspace in exchange for strength. Living in an empire, as a commoner, you only have two choices. Believe in the emperor, use faith to make you persist in living in hardship. Turn towards the evil god, let you transform into a non-human thing with full anger, and then die in the decomposition force field of the chainsaw sword. The emperor does not care about this, so the rulers of the various worlds under his rule do not care. Salicite is such a person who does not feel anything wrong with the suffering of the common people, and he is also a loyal supporter of the empire and a staunch supporter of the emperor. Your Excellency, today is September 9th. Your itinerary today is to receive an imperial envoy and go to another secondary star district within this star district, where there is a world called Liting. In the morning, Salika's butler was holding the newly issued order from the empire, stunned and lost in thought. He didn't say anything later. What are you going there for? Do you want them to pay the sacred tax to support the war, or do you want to go there and clean up the heretics? Salicite is relatively gentle with the butler. The main reason is that his father died early, and the butler exercised his father's responsibilities. However, after his mother also died, the butler was able to exercise half of his father's responsibilities. At that time, Salicite was still a child under 7 years old, and the butler felt guilty for some reason. He treated Salicite as his own son to raise him and eliminated all political enemies for him. Salicite has no feelings for his parents, so he mostly turns a blind eye to the insults that the butler has added to him. Anyway, Naixing is his world, who dares to chew his tongue and start reincarnation on the spot. Moreover, this situation in his family is already normal or even biased towards good among the entire ruling and aristocratic class of Naixing. In summary, the noble circle of Naixing is very chaotic. No, I may have been dizzy from old age. I saw the command transcribed by the Star Whisperer being. There is a world called Lighting that, with the approval of the Emperor, the Empire, and Lord Mikado, will declare independence. You will serve as the Emperor's envoy to go there and declare the absolute friendship between the Empire and Lighting. The butler looked back and forth several times, his eyes wide open, completely unaware of the situation. Salik snatched the document written in Gagothic from the butler's hand and repeatedly confirmed the anti-counterfeiting on it. At this moment, his shock even exceeded when he witnessed the butler performing his duties with his own eyes. The Empire's great expedition was aimed at shining the entire galaxy under the Emperor's radiance. Now, the Emperor personally orders the declaration of independence for a world. Salicite found the Empire's eagle right symbol under the 9th line, 9th word of this document, which is the final layer of anti-counterfeiting. Damn it. When he looked up and sighed, he completely didn't notice that the Tianying ritual symbol had moved. Do you want to set off immediately and convey the Emperor's message? The butler had a deep psychological shadow over Mikado, who dressed like a prisoner or ascetic. The other party had swift and decisive measures and had killed many imperial nobles who held a far higher position than the governor of Naruto. Let me think. Salasai began to think that as a ruler, he was not a complete fool. But this incident had a huge impact on him. He had been imitating the Emperor's style of behavior, always believing that any world should belong to the Emperor. He made every human on the planet Narita praise the Emperor every day, and even felt that an ordinary double eagle ceremony was not enough to express his loyalty to the Empire. He had to make some changes to the details of the eagle ceremony he made in private in front of the mirror. The repeated changes over the years made the eagle ceremony very different from the original one. But he felt inexplicably satisfied. But Your Excellency, the order is for immediate. Shut up, don't disturb my thoughts. If it weren't for all the years you've been working for me, disturbing my loyalty to the Empire through meditation would be enough for me to kill you now. Salik gave the butler a fierce glare and then walked to the restroom on his own. The housekeeper muttered behind him. If you were not my kind, you think I would have conscience to help you keep the hereditary governor, kill all your 8 brothers and sisters, and finally give you all my strength. Salasai quickly regained consciousness with the water he had used from the garden world. He finally survived the shock. The Emperor was right, and he should have honestly expressed his friendship with Li Ting. But when he looked up, his face was reflected in the mirror, along with the modified double-headed eagle emblem on the wall behind him. Are you really willing? I don't know if it's an illusion, but he started murmuring to himself in the mirror. No, I'm not willing, but this is the Emperor's order, he won't be wrong. You are not loyal. If you are loyal, you should strive for everything for the Emperor. No one is more loyal than me, Salichi Nankovi. I pray to the Emperor 9 times a day. No, you're not loyal. Words are meaningless, you should put your loyalty into action. What actions can I take? It seems like I'm representing friendship for the Empire, but in reality, I'm just a tool for communication, and everyone knows this. No, there can be a lot of room for maneuver in this friendship agreement. It's great. Just reach a verbal friendship, isn't it? Slavery and rule won't end like this. Every world of the Empire is highly autonomous, so it's not difficult to give them verbal friendship. Wait, I can't think about it. Are you a stupid pig? This requires thinking. Think. In an ordinary Nest City world, how much internal defense force is there when there is no rebellion? Even if there is a Star Realm army stationed, will the Star Realm army obey the envoy who conveys orders to the Emperor or the governor of that planet? Do you not know the instinct of using force to coerce rulers? It's not the first time Salik has had an argument with himself, so he thinks it's normal. Even in the past, this kind of argument made him profit from different choices every time and become a winner. Now, he feels that this argument is also very useful, and he cannot fail because of his own advice in the mirror. His dependence on himself has become as indispensable as his breath. Can it be that the self in the mirror has helped oneself so many times, just playing with oneself to give oneself a chance to fail? Every time he failed in the past, he would change and become a success due to arguing with himself. It doesn't make sense to make a mistake this time. He finally made up his mind. The he in the mirror reminds. Wait, don't forget to prepare a gift. Where is the gift? The purple box you put into your personal vault during your sleepwalk last night, did you forget? I haven't forgotten. I have been constantly preparing for the most knowledgeable and wise Emperor. Salasai retorted himself and then walked out the door. He cursed while walking. After he left, there was still his reflection in the mirror. Next to his reflection, the 2-headed eagle came to life. He painted me so ugly. The head of a two-headed bird says so. He can still draw me an even uglier one in the future. Add the other head of the two-headed bird. And Salasai's reflection was laughing softly. As a response to your provocative Yang Mao, I hope you like it, Guan Yu. This reflection gave up on a toy that was too tired of playing. Salasai's successful transformation has become a norm, making him feel uninteresting. I really look forward to your expression when you open the gift box. After writing this chapter, I even lost 9 collections. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Shadow Moon Wolf. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Shadow Moon Wolf. At this moment, a platoon of interstellar warriors is hovering on the Niway. These estates have been lost in subspace for over 18 years, which is not a long number. Since the Iron Man Rebellion began, the subspace has become increasingly unstable, and the continuous subspace storms have begun to disrupt the expansion and development of the Empire. Subspace, a chaotic place that can accommodate both matter and spirit, an indescribable realm of time and space chaos. Its chaotic nature of time and space has been utilized by many civilizations for long-distance navigation across the starry sea. The Milky Way is too big. A star region is as big as a cube with a side length of 200 light-years, and the Imperial fleet cannot fly slowly over it. All navigation is carried out by subspace engines. The subspace engine will bring warships into subspace, reducing the space and time gap to reach their destination through subspace. But the drawbacks are obvious. After all, subspace is the domain of the chaotic gods, where the 4 main gods and a large number of secondary gods are watching over these small insects entering and exiting within their line of sight. It is possible to be temporarily or even permanently lost in subspace. Therefore, special psychics such as navigators have emerged, but unfortunately, these psychics cannot guarantee absolute stability and safety in navigation. Gavalokan, the commander of the 10th Company of the Shadow Moon Wolf Legion, was the highest commander among the crowd present. At this moment, they are stuck on the surface of Na 6 with a complete ecosystem, roasting sweet potatoes around the stove. The Star Realm Army and some mortal servants who were sailing in the subspace with the Shadow Moon Wolf are currently in a very bad situation. In the subspace, people will hear many whispers, which cannot be understood and can cause extremely terrifying damage to ordinary people with weak willpower, and even cause special attacks on psychics. Even a few Shadow Moon Grey Wolves have undergone localized body mutations. This person has short golden hair and a face full of scars. At first glance, he looks like a weathered platoon leader, but on the surface, he looks quite calm, even though his inner self is extremely anxious. His appearance is very different from the other Shadow Moon Wolf around him. Almost every Star Warrior Legion has a genetic defect, and Shadow Moon Wolf is no exception. After completing the Estat transformation surgery in their youth, the interstellar warriors of Shadow Moon Wolf grew more and more like their pathogens. Luo Ken did not have such a flaw, but he was not excluded by his brothers around him. His ability to become the commander of the 10th Company of the Shadow Moon and Blue Wolf Legion also demonstrates his extraordinary personal charm and military literacy. Beside Loken was a Nacional official held by numerous estates. Now, he sat beside the fire with his scalp tingling, watching Loken eat roasted sweet potatoes without saying a word or peeling off the skin. Respected Emperor Angel, I have told you the situation I know 20.1 times, really, I really don't know anything else. This official from Naixing hates his talkativeness. He came with the governor the day before yesterday to welcome these pale canned goods. Unexpectedly, the platoon leader's face became even paler as he pressed him here with his many words, almost choking him to death. That sentence is, another group of people who have lost their material providers. Before he could finish speaking, he was surrounded by the Star Warriors who were loading their explosive rifles, and then pitifully brought to Loken's place. Then he told the stories of those known material providers over and over again. All the material providers who participated in the war had the same appearance, and they gave all the legions an unexpected warmth. They repeatedly provided guidance to these interstellar warriors who fought on the front line. They will sacrifice themselves in the most despairing moments and make every estat evacuate as much as possible. This almost excited Loken and his fighting brothers, causing their blood to accelerate and their hearts to beat wildly. Because they have experienced these firsthand. 19 years ago, their material provider came to their side, and at first, people didn't pay much attention to this military officer. But as time passed, the material provider gradually changed them. Even conflicts have erupted between them. The following events began to bring about a significant change in their perception of the material provider. They specifically dispatched several estates to guard their material providers, which were the company's weapons, medical care, and food guarantees. But when they fell into a fierce battle on a cruel battlefield, he convinced the estates who guarded him to rush into the battlefield together. In that battle, the 10th Company should have lost 80% of its personnel, but only 7 people died in the end. He shuttled between the dying and injured, not even letting go of the Star Realm army. When they once again felt the power within their bodies, the scorching air on that planet, and the warmth of the food offered by material providers, they began to be impressed. They spent just over 3 months with him, but they engraved the vivid memories he had created deep in their minds. Mu Whaley Star. A stat recalled that planet which was submerged by the ocean of heretics. They were prepared for sacrifice, and the scale of the battle was too extraordinary for a company to handle. It was a hunting ground specifically designed for them. At that moment, the material provider stood up, radiating a dim radiance from his body. The mutants and the ugly monsters around them who would return to the battlefield after death screamed and roared outside the radiance, prostrating themselves on the ground. Continuing, they saw nightmares they didn't want to experience in their lifetime. The body of the material provider begins to be ignited by some kind of light, transforming into a plasma state. In a calm and gentle goodbye, all the members of the 10th Company scattered on the planet, along with warships and various heavy firepower, were enveloped by multiple subspace vortices that appeared simultaneously and left the planet. When Loken and many of his brothers turned around, they only saw the dim glow extinguish, and the final plasma state disappear in the wind. Half a month later, they headed to the next planet, and each person vented their anger in that battle, causing some confusion in their hearts. This led to their impact and entering the subspace after victory, causing them to get lost and lose contact with the Empire for over a decade. In the battleship, there was a large amount of food that their lost glory had produced for them, which was placed in a food safety warehouse. These sweet potatoes were left by him, and Loken and his brothers loved these sweet starch potatoes. The estates, who took off their helmets and ate sweet potatoes, remained silent collectively. Their material providers are likely to be the same as those of other legions. He made the same choice for each company of each legion. In the eyes of those people, he turned into a plasma and eventually extinguished on a certain planet. This silence was interrupted by an unpleasant guy. Ladies and gentlemen. The angels of the Emperor. Salasai still restrained himself from saying the 4 words, wise Emperor. Governor Nishing. Loken stood up with a condescending attitude. Salasai has no dissatisfaction, and any estat deserves the respect of the governors. Dear esteemed angels, I have just received a document from the Empire, which is an order from the great Emperor. Salasai is gentle and persuasive. Loken and many loyal Shadow Moon Wolf's eyes lit up. The Emperor is above, what new combat missions require, Shadow Moon, Sunlang. Angels, in fact, this mission was not explicitly assigned to you. This is actually my request, a request from an ordinary imperial governor who is loyal to the Empire and the Emperor. Salasai's words caused many estates to lose interest. Even Estat felt that his index finger had not been close to the trigger for a long time. Salak spoke at a faster pace. It's like this, the Empire issued an order for me to sign a peace agreement on behalf of the Empire with a nest world named Li Ting in the local star region. Salak deliberately didn't explain the matter clearly and in detail. What do you mean? Loken's attention was once again drawn, and he dug out the details from Salasai's words. Belonging to the Empire, why sign a peace agreement with the Empire? Respected company commander, that world will declare independence with the recognition of the Empire. Salasai lowered his head and extended his neck to aim at the estates. Luoken suddenly stood up, startling the officials next to him. The other estates began to wonder if the explosive gun was too cheap, this nonsense governor. When Loken approached, Salak took out the document with the double anti-counterfeiting label. Loken deciphered the third anti-counterfeiting label using the method of Shadow Moon Wolf. Finally, he raised his right hand and signaled the estates behind him to lay down their weapons facing the governor. It's true. Loken never expresses his joy or anger in words, and his calm tone does not represent the true state of his heart. The impact on the other estates was too great. They looked at their brothers from side to side and looked at each other, confirming whether they had heard correctly and whether this was some kind of illusion caused by the aftermath of the subspace maze. Loken stuffed the hot sweet potato in his hand into his mouth. What do we need to do? He was wearing power armor and stood in front of Salasai, feeling a strong sense of oppression, as if he could punch the young ruler to death in the next second. I think we should make greater efforts to fight for the interests of the Empire. The content of the peace agreement is not detailed. I think you can lend me a little bit of strength to make this world called Li Ting shrouded in the glory of the Empire even after independence. Salak concealed some things, and the document he handed to Loken was missing one. The less important one is clear. This document comes from Mikado and was personally ordered by the Emperor, who demanded respect for Li Ting. In fact, this document may have been originally one, but it was disrupted by some special force when it arrived at the planet Narita. We will. Loken's gaze remained calm, but the Shadow Moon Wolf warriors who were familiar with him knew that their platoon leader was becoming increasingly dangerous to the enemy. End of this chapter.